So I have to, this is another moment that counts. And I feel so privileged. I feel this, yesterday, day 31, I gave you an inside view to my coaching. I did this extraordinary conversation with Ed Cox. And within that, I revealed to you, really the framework of what my inner workings of how I work with clients to awaken conscious leadership. So I'm very mindful that there's now a new thread emerging, and I'm imagining that there may be many coaches or even teachers or trainers that are watching these videos. So I am absolutely overjoyed in that same thread, and you might be looking for a coach yourself. So to introduce you to one of the world's leading coaches, Heath Dieckert. And I want to actually kind of show you the scale of what he's doing, and not only show you the scale of what he's doing, but the essence of who he is in the work that he does. And so Heath, we've been on a partnership. In fact, we met when John Mackey, I had been coaching Alexander McCoben, the CEO of Conscious Capitalism, for a number of years. I've been coaching him since the beginning of his journey. And then John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods, who you had an association with, and he was actually beginning to experience your genius, recommended to Alexander that you join, our team. And we've been working together in blessed service of Alexander. We've been co-coaching him for a good solid year or so. I think that's the duration we've worked together. And what's been beautiful about our relationship is there's been, sometimes you might imagine, oh, you've got two coaches over here and you're competing for turf. It was never like that. It was only like, how can we work together in best service of Alexander? That was the frame of what we said, like what best serves Alexander. And I think because we held that container, our partnership was catalytic for Alexander. I truly believed it was only through us working together that Alexander got to the next level in a glorious way. And he's thriving now as a conscious leader. And I don't think he would have got to that level with me alone. What you brought to the relationship, the partnership, was a dimension that enabled him to kind of go to the next level as well. And just to kind of paint a picture, we would both have our coaching calls with Alexander separately. So it wasn't like we were a threesome together, but we would both have our individual calls, but then we would have these precious, precious calls, just you and me alone, twofold. One was, kind of really coordinating about what was best in service of Alexander, but that was a half the call. But the other half of the call was, I'd spoken about this in the previous video with Chip about being a mentor in relationship. I'm in a mentor in relationship with Chip, and I'm in a mentor in relationship with many other extraordinary leaders. And so we would spend the other half of that learning and sharing with each other in a mentor in relationship. And so for me, you've blessed my life, and I hope I've served you well. And so I'll just pause there with sufficient context and just, presence, invite you to presence, whatever you want to say, and just the blessing of knowing you.
I'm going to add a little color to what I remember about us first meeting. I remember being approached by John to work with Alexander, and I was overjoyed with that opportunity because conscious capitalism for me saved my life. I was in corporate America working 20 years in big tech companies. And over time, the exposure to John and conscious capitalism and Raj and all the other members of that organization opened my eyes to what it looks like when you align your personal energy with your business efforts. And so I had been moved personally by conscious capitalism significantly. I was at a conscious capitalism conference, and Alexander was up on stage, and I didn't plan it, but I ended up sitting next to you at a table at the lecture. And and you asked me who I was and what I was doing, and I think I mentioned that I'm going to be working with Alexander on developing him, and you kind of sat back and in your humble way, you listened to me speak, and then you mentioned that you had been coaching him up until now. And I remember when I realized who you were, because I had heard you speak at that same conference. I'd heard you give a presentation, and I remember thinking, my God, this is going to be so powerful. And I wasn't quite sure how to channel that power at that time. As you said, sometimes you would imagine that people are competitive in nature, or that there's lots of ways that it could play out. So I was very glad to see that you're wired like I am, and collaboration is one of the great joys, and even an opportunity for us to teach each other and to help each other. And that's what I feel. I immediately, in just a matter of moments sitting with you at that table, I went from feeling excited about the opportunity to work with another world-class client to realizing this was a much bigger opportunity for me. It was an opportunity to take everything that I had learned and to pair it with everything that you learned, which admittedly are complementary but different skill sets. Yeah. And I find that you've been that for me. You've introduced me to some of my favorite clients because you've resonated with them and you've served them. And it's rare. I mean, I try to meet a new coach every week, and I've been doing that for years. So I know thousands of coaches at this point. But it's rare to find somebody where it's such a nice symbiosis, and it's natural, and it comes easily, and the world just kind of lays it out before us. So that's how it felt to me, was that I wouldn't have had the wisdom to seek you out, but because the world provided us that opportunity, I at least had the wisdom to grasp onto it and to latch onto you and to work together as much as our lives allowed. And it's been fabulous. It's been fabulous. I think our results with Alexander have been fabulous. I'm very proud of him. He did a lot of the hard work, but I think the nurturing that we were both able to provide him individually helped him. And I have to say that even my awareness of your illness, which came relatively recently, that really shook me, because I look at you as a man who has most of your life worked out, and you're doing the right things. You're taking time to be with your family. You've got good work-life balance. You have this amazingly impactful practice. And for something to come upon you and affect you in the way that this disease is affecting you, I literally, you probably had no visibility to what happened on the other side of the screen, but when I went through and read your email that you sent me in response to my inquiry, I like took a day off and thought about my life, because it made me realize that I need to make sure that, although I get great joy out of pouring my heart and soul into clients, and I do it, my calendar's very full doing that, it made me realize that I need to make sure I'm taking full advantage of every age and stage of life that's happening to me. So in a way, again, even through your own trials and tribulations, you've given me pause to think about how to be a better person.
Well, I just want to say, you're already at a baseline. So I want to kind of now reflect back on you. I really thank you for sharing that. So I want to reflect back on the extraordinary person that you are. Could you say, I want to be a better person, but I want to understand, I mean, that's starting from a very high baseline of accomplishment already. So I'm trying to think of the rarefied air you would be moving into.
Sure.
So would you be willing to share, how it is that you came to be considered as one of the world's leading coaches? And I'm going to show you a website right now, because I'm going to share my screen. You have, well, I'm going to show, you've got your personal practice, but then I'm going to just flash in, you've got this, we're coming here because that is a larger business, but you've got your personal group, and your personal group just alone, it's the Dieckert group. And you've got a group of coaches that collectively have served 10,000 clients, 3,000 companies in 43 countries. And I'm imagining that many of you would recognize these brand names who you've served: Hershey's, 3M, BMW, Adidas. I mean, Costco. I mean, I'm Whole Foods. I mean, that's John Mackey. I'm assuming that's how you came to make that introduction.
Sure.
So could you share a little bit about the Dieckert group? And then we're actually going to go, like, you might think, well, that's pretty impressive. And I promise you, we're going to step it up one more level after this.
Well, I think to understand what an accomplishment is, you have to figure out where you're starting from. And, I started in a good family. I had a great 20-year career in technology. But as I got exposed to John Mackey and conscious capitalism and many of the people inside it, I felt a growing desire myself to do something different than to work in a big tech company.
Can
So
you
in 2000,
I just want to pause over here because I'm making an assumption that people know who John Mackey is, and most people do. John Mackey is the CEO of Whole Foods.
That's right. He's the founder and CEO of Whole Foods, which, by the way, I've learned over the course of my practice that I love working with founders. Founders are they're my sweet spot. Founders and CEOs are my sweet spot. So as this hunger rose in me to try to figure out how to align my passion for giving and service with some of my skills that I'd learned in corporate America, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to start a coaching organization. And actually, when I first started it, I kind of said to myself, gosh, I'd just like to see if I could coach somebody. And so I started in 2017, the Dieckert group. It started as just me. And it was amazing because my first 3 clients quickly grew to a full palette of clients that I could no longer support just by myself. And so I started bringing in other experts from industry. I told you I've been interviewing coaches for a long time. And so I called on 20 years ago, I got my first coaching from the Center for Creative Leadership, Noel Osborne. There you see Noel. Noel was the head assessor for the Center for Creative Leadership, and I brought him in to do all of my assessments. Then I took Michael Anderson, took Dr. John Burroughs. John Burroughs ran the UT Executive MBA program for, I want to say, close to 10 years. He was looking at transitioning into coaching, so we trained him on how to start his practice, and then he joined us. Meg Wolf is a great coach in her own right. But collectively, we've served, like the website says, a ton of amazing companies. We had to whittle down the icon list from, that it was like 3 pages, and they said it was excessive for a website. So we've been able to have amazing impact with a number of different companies out there. And what I love about it is, unlike my previous job where I really appreciated the complexity of working in a global communications organization or Hewlett Packard, which was one of the biggest companies in the world at the time, coaching, you get to be very specific. Just like when we did our work together with Alexander, you go in deep and you spend an immense amount of time getting to know each of them personally. And that's the power of committing yourself wholly to another person and throwing all of your energy into helping them be successful and to understand themselves and understand the impact they have on the people in their world, their stakeholders and their extended stakeholder group. That almost sacrifice of your life to another person, in my mind, is the greatest gift you can give. And so that's what I give it as much as I can. And when I run out of time, sometimes I squeeze an extra person in on the left or right.
So, one of the things that, the sunflower and the graphic on my book, it's a fractal. So it's ultimately, how we, and I'm imagining, I'm imagining, well, I know that we have the same philosophy of coaching. It's not one of actually providing advice. Mm-hmm. What we're essentially doing is we're empowering individuals to self-coach themselves. We're empowering individuals to self-coach themselves and then transfer the skill to actually coach their next level leadership down, which is to how they go about self-coaching themselves. So you're building capacity from the bottom up rather than getting these leaders to actually kind of, it's not top-down leadership. It's actually coaching. It's coaching, the model of self-coaching, unlocking the capacity, the inner wisdom of somebody who can actually unlock the inner wisdom of the next level of leadership. So you're actually creating, as a fractal,
that's right,
elevation in the world.
The truth is that I've found in my practice, there's something magical about founders, especially. They're like the magicians of the modern day. They take an idea and they turn it into something real that impacts the world. And that happens over and over again as their company grows and as their interests expand. I think the fractal model is a beautiful one, and it's completely accurate. I also think that many times they influence more by what they don't say or what they don't do. It's what they reveal through their actions that people align with. And so I find, I've never been a huge public speaker. I've not written books. My gift is the direct service of another human being. So I find by working with founders, especially in mission-driven companies or nonprofit companies, and especially the companies associated with conscious capitalism, which is my absolute favorite place to work, those guys and gals, their impact just expands. It expands through all their stakeholder groups, their staff, their suppliers, their partners, their investors, their clients, their customers. So that's the biggest way I know how to change the world.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and what I appreciate about our working relationship is that fractal. People assume that, oh, coaches have all the answers. It's not true. I mean, coaches we've got to do our own work. We've got to do our own work. And sometimes that work sometimes the work actually puts a squeeze on us, because like we're coaching these very accomplished people when there may be times that we don't feel entirely congruent with what we're coaching. It's like we first have to learn our own lessons. And so this idea of us having been in like a mini mastermind, supporting each other to be at our best so we can do this work in the world, that was actually, I think, one of the blessings of our working together. It's, I experienced, as much as you experienced humility in me, I experienced humility in you. And you were like basically saying, Danny, how can I get better? And you have this insatiable, when I look for fit in my clients, I want to know, I'm looking for very specific criteria. One is ownership. And then there are these qualities of openness, the ability to access self-compassion, because you can go deeper on self-compassion. And it's about, it's self-compassion and kindness. And then it's about insatiable curiosity. And then there's this ability to be present and being very much on purpose. And I think that's why we worked so well together, because those are our core values. And so we were in this very rich relationship, running active learning cycles ourselves, so we could serve at a higher level in the world. And to be in that kind of relationship, one-on-one with somebody of your caliber and your knowledge base, is just such an extraordinary gift. And I want to just thank you. I consider that, this being one of the blessings of my life, to be in co-service of our, co-emerging growth together, so we can serve more fully in the world. So it's been a wonderful experience in that way. So it's almost like we've got to do the work first as coaches, so we can actually, and I remember John Mackey saying, he was at the conference and he said he noticed that every moment of catalytic growth that Whole Foods made related to a catalytic shift he made in his personal transformation.
Yes, that's right.
So the idea is that a founder will never, the growth of a company will never exceed the level of consciousness of that leader.
That's right.
It will never exceed the conscious. So the investment that founders make in their conscious leadership is not only in their personal growth, it's actually in the growth of their company. Right. And then Rand Stagen, another legendary coach, within the conscious capitalism space, I would actually say, Rand is kind of like in that rarefied era of like extraordinary coaches himself, and he runs the Stagen Institute. He says, he's got a wonderful quote. He says, leaders get the organizations they deserve.
Yes. The organization is the natural consequence of their influence.
Exactly right. So it's what you're saying, and that's reason enough for any founder or any leader that's looking to invest in coaching. I would say that there's a big enough reason to invest for yourself, but I would say invest for the mission-driven purpose that you have, for the culture that's going to deliver on your vision and values.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I learned to be a coach by being coached. I received coaching for 20 years, and I got to see a lot of the ways that that was done. Most of those relationships were extremely productive for me, but some of them could have been done more effectively. It could have resonated better with me. And so when I was looking at the influencers of the industry that I wanted to emulate when I was starting my practice, one of the guys that stood out to me was Marshall Goldsmith.
This is a great, I said we're about to pivot. So we're about to pivot. And just let me know when you would like me to bring up this other screen, because
let's get there in a minute.
I just want to put a wrap on this as we transition. Yeah. We're transitioning from one impressive business that you have. Okay. Now, if you were doing that 100% of your time, that would be beyond impressive enough. I think most people would agree that the level of coaching that you're doing. But now you've got this other business that is even more impressive, I think, even more impressive in scale. So I think this is when you're transitioning to talking about Marshall Goldsmith. So I wanted you to I want people to actually brace themselves for a shift.
Yeah, that's right. And there are a few characters in my life that keep coming up. One is John Mackey from Whole Foods. He's obviously been a huge catalyst in my life. Conscious capitalism is another catalyst. Marshall is a third catalyst for me. So when I was seeking how I wanted to do my practice with the most integrity, one of the interesting things about coaching is it's not a regulated industry. It's anybody can call themselves a coach, and there's a lot of people that call themselves coaches that maybe shouldn't call themselves coaches.
Before we go too much further with Marshall Goldsmith, because I think there might be 3% of the population that's never heard of Marshall Goldsmith, right?
Yeah.
So for those 3%, can you share who Marshall Goldsmith is before we continue the conversation?
Sure. Marshall, at the time that I knew him in 2015 and 16, he was known as the world's most productive coach, the most influential coach. Many books and professional organizations had rated him at the very top of the game. So he was coaching Alan Mulally at Ford. He was coaching many of the political leaders of the world. He was coaching military leaders. He was a major thought leader in terms of personal and professional leadership. And so he was easy. Like when I did an inventory of who the top 100 coaches were in the industry that I wanted to study, he was number one, and he was all over the place. Everybody was talking about him. So in the coaching industry, he's quite the influencer. He's a celebrity. But what I admired about him was not that. I think that is impressive in its own right. But what I admired about him was the integrity of his practice, and that he was known for creating outcomes for people that were measurable, not just measurable in terms of what he saw or what the client saw, but measurable in terms of social proof. So he would collect feedback from all the people around the client, and then he would only consider him successful, and in his case, only take payment when they had observed the change in the client that they thought was permanent. And that shook me. I was like, man, there's a lot of coaches that will sell you very expensive coaching, but I don't know very many coaches that will not accept payment until everybody around the client agrees that he or she has changed in the way that is required for the organization. And that really resonated with me. It made me aspire to have a practice, whether it was structured in that same way. It made me aspire to have a practice that was that solid, that dependable, that I wanted to know that when I was going to serve a client, that I could create that kind of change with them with that kind of confidence that I'd be willing to put the money on the line. So about the same time I started my practice, Marshall started an organization. I think he originally called it like 15 coaches or something like that. And his goal, he's a beautiful man. Part of the reason I knew so much about him is he gives everything away. He gives all his knowledge away. He'll give it to you for free. He'll write podcasts and blog posts, and he'll share everything. But what I really was impressed with was when he put out this invitation. He said, I want to take 15 people and teach them everything that I know so that it lives beyond me and that nothing's lost in the transition. I think he had 20,000 or something people apply for those 15 slots. And these were world-class people from all over the world, world-class thought leaders, world-class coaches, world-class speakers, CEOs, et cetera. And so he decided to expand. He said, this is bigger than me. And he created what's called now 100 Coaches. And this 100 Coaches is an invite only.
This might be a place for me to. I'm gonna actually.
Flip it up there. Sure.
The screen?
It's a group of people that I consider to be some of the most effective, influential change agents for personal growth and leadership. Not as much in the spirit of what you typically work on, Danny, but in terms of the capital markets, in terms of people that are changing the minds of the Fortune 1000 leaders and the Inc. 5000 leaders. These are the people that I'm regularly reading their books. Got Alan Mulally, who was the CEO at Ford. You got Frances Hesselbein. If you scroll down a little bit, the lady in the red shirt there is amazing. I can't ever say her name, but we have the head coach for Google. If we scroll down a little bit more, you got.
Maybe can you just say who's the head coach for Google?
Shoot, I'm horrible with names. I apologize. I can't say it. But see Mark Thompson there. So Mark is the coach that coaches like Lyft, and you got him down there at the bottom of the blue shirt. He's coached Virgin, you name it. Like, the thing is, the qualifications of these people are so amazing that I get intimidated when I get in the room with them, or I get intimidated when I get on a call with them, because they're the best. They're the people I look up to in the industry.
Well, I'm just looking, I'm scrolling through over here, and I'm noticing I'm imagining Chris Como,
Yeah,
the anchor of CNN. I think that many people, Gary Ridge, I know Gary Ridge is a legendary, he's the CEO of WD-40.
that's right.
So it's, even there's Mark Thompson that you were referring to. And he says basically #1 CEO coach, Lyft, Pinterest, World Bank, Virgin, New York Times bestselling author.
That's right.
So I can appreciate, by the way, the fact that you've got 100 coaches. They're doing such extraordinary work. So even when you're having a trouble remembering the lead coach of Google, you are forgiven, because these are the people that are doing the extraordinary work.
Yeah, we all have our own frailties. My frailty is names. I'm horrible at remembering names, which is something I've never been able to overcome. But it's enough to say that being associated with these people and this group of people, and by the way, it's not just 100. They call it 100 coaches, but its intention is to be the 100 top coaches in every country. So I think there's currently about 250 members on this list, and it's so extensive that I started trying to, for my own benefit, create a database of all the things that they've done. And I exceeded the row list on Excel. I couldn't create a spreadsheet that contained all of their accomplishments and impacts. So suffice to say, not every amazing person that influences leadership is on this list, but there is a huge heap of talent that's in this community. Now, the way this community works is, in Marshall's brilliant way, it is a affiliation. They're not all co-employed by Marshall. They all have their own brands, their own companies. In many cases, Fortune 1000 companies that participate in this, but they've all come together to create community and to elevate each other so that they can serve all of their constituencies better. And so the 100 Coaches, what it is, it's an affiliation that works. We do coaching referrals. So many times people will know they need a coach. They won't know who they'll need. They'll reach out to this organization and they'll hook them up with 3 or 4 strong recommendations of world-class coaches. Well, what happened to me, which was frankly one of the best accomplishments of my life, is so far, I should say, is Scott Osmond, who's been running and facilitating 100 Coaches for Marshall for some time, reached out to me at the end of 2019. And based off of the productivity I'd had in my small boutique practice, he said to himself, if we can get that kind of productivity for the 100 Coaches and bring all these people to bear with the same efficiency you have in your practice, that would be amazing. It would change the world. So at the beginning of 2020, Marshall and Scott offered me an ownership stake. They gifted me an ownership stake in this organization in return for helping them run this more effectively, more efficiently. And I have to say, serving these people, I've only just begun, but serving these people is one of the greatest gifts of my life. And also being able to be in community with them is also one of the greatest gifts of my life.
Would you be willing to share? I want people to know you hear ownership stake, and you might think, 5% ownership stake, it's a token because they want to bring you in. What would you be willing to share? What percentage of ownership stake you have in this endeavor?
Yeah, so it's an equal ownership stake, and the way we've got it is we both took Scott and I both took an equal ownership stake. He diluted himself to basically give me equal ownership. And then we both donate a percentage of the profits of the organization to the charity associated with Marshall's organization. So
amazing. So what you're saying is you have a 50% ownership stake in this endeavor.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want you to pause, everybody. I want you to pause. When I said that I'm looking to build a coalition of extraordinary leaders, individuals, and organizations that can actually do the work of facilitating healing, growth, and flourishing wellness in the world. Do you feel that Heath Dieckert is one of those individuals representing an organization that has that capacity to lever the world? So I think the answer is an easy yes. Yes. So again, my blessing of being connected. This is not about me. It's about me having the ability to actually build a coalition that actually brings leaders, extraordinary leaders like Heath Dieckert, into this coalition. So would it be okay if I extend an invitation to you now? Can we move into that?
Absolutely. There's one last thing I want to say, though. I have a secret objective, and I'm going to make it less secret in this call. I'm affiliated with Conscious Capitalism, and I love the work that they're doing in the small and medium business space. I love the work that the 100 Coaches is doing with the Fortune 1000, the Inc. 5000, the big companies of the world. And I see a real opportunity to bring those two things together. And I'm hoping, Danny, that what you're putting together will help that all come together. There's so much. What I love about it is the 100 Coaches is they're already moving in this direction. Conscious Capitalism is already moving in this direction. You're moving in this direction with what you've built. I think there's an opportunity to unify it and make it stronger.
This is extraordinary, because what I'm thinking about is this work that we're doing. I'm even thinking about the Awakening Conscious Leadership Deep Dive. What that might feel like is, as we're, awakening these coaches to that program possibly, and that they actually can ripple that out to the Fortune 100, 500, 1000. How does that lever the world? How does that kind of create a lever in the world? And I would be absolutely honored to explore the synergy that we have to actually create this bridge between that mid-sized company and, the iconic brands that move the world. So, placeholder, I'm so glad that you declared that glorious vision, because that's, we're building bridges over there.
Danny, can I get you to stop sharing the screen so I can see you a little bit better?
Oh, thank you. And actually, I really appreciate that invitation. Because it was actually a perfect time for me to stop sharing the screen, because now this is about me and you, right? Well, it's not only about me and you, it's about us and the world in creating, partnering to create global transformation at this time of historic need, and opportunity. And so I had invited you before this call to watch the video with, the call with Susi Ellis on day 25. And I think that was a defining moment in terms of the possibility of what this can be, because what it's given us a place to convene. It's given us a place to convene, and it's a mix of convening extraordinary leaders within. So Susi had offered, if you haven't seen the day 25 and you're just coming into this video for the first time, Susi had, is leading one of the most influential organizations it's the Davos of the global wellness industry. So it's massive in scale. I mean, these are all I'm imagining all the clients that you have available to you in that ecosystem.
Sure.
So it's very significant. And Susi has these annual summits. So we gather for summits, and the tagline of, literally is the leader. The tagline for the summit is joining together to shape the future. And that's what that summit is all about, annual summit. And for example, in India, when they did the India summit, the Dalai Lama keynoted. When they did the event in Mexico City, Deepak Chopra keynoted. So it's that level. And so the next summit is in Israel in November 2021. So we're going back to the Holy Land to do holy work.
Sounds amazing.
How extraordinary is that? And so, because Susi has offered me, she's the nonprofit arm of the Global Wellness Summit is the Global Wellness Institute. The Global Wellness Institute provides continuity between the summits for extraordinary work, and their tagline is empowering wellness. I think I've got it right. Empowering wellness worldwide. And she's got all these incredible resources, including wellnessevidence.com, that sets the scientific foundation for the entire industry, which I helped her co-create. And then she's got all these initiatives. And these initiatives are, as you map them into the SDGs of the United Nations, you're going to find a lot of initiatives that overlap with those SDGs.
Sure.
And so literally and she's even got like kind of a partnership with the Vatican to reset wellness. So it's big in scale. So she invited me to take Living Well from Within, this YouTube channel, and actually create an initiative within their suite of initiatives. And so next call that I have is, I'm the chair of the initiative, and I'm working with co-leaders with titles yet to be determined, Wendy Bosilovich and Sally Frankel, who are really, extraordinary leaders in their own right that are helping shape the initiative. And actually, anecdotally, my wife, Sue, is the vice chair. So, it's just, there's continuity over there. But what I've been given is a lane to extend invitations to extraordinary individuals and organizations. And I've already started making those invitations. And I think you'll see in the unfolding of events, we're assembling a significant coalition. And it'll be a mix within the Institute. We would probably have, whether it be yet to be determined, but some frequency, whether they be quarterly meetings, meaningful meetings between these annual summits. There would be some frequency of meeting where we're doing high value work to build experiences. And the blessing of me having been through exchange, certification, appreciative inquiry, working with John Berghoff, there's a methodology, because appreciative inquiry, which was founded by David Cooperrider, is the methodology that can unlock individual and collective wisdom at scale, build an ability to actually kind of execute at scale in a very efficient way. So we have the people, we have the methodology, we have the housing. So all of that's in place. And then we have these annual convenings. And yet to be determined whether or not we would convene to do with these. I mean, I would imagine that all the leaders would come to the Global Wellness Summit. That would be a slam dunk. Mm-hmm. But whether or not we actually do this work in the summit or a pre-summit, because typically we have there are these 3-day pre-summits, and I've got, I won't kind of reveal, I've got this extraordinary location that I have in mind where we could actually have a pre-summit. It's magical. It's magical. And it's at the vanguard of, what wellness looks like in the hospitality. It's a venue that's at the vanguard of the hospitality industry as they've shaped, their leading wellness. So I have at the very least, I have this vision for extraordinary world leaders in their various disciplines with world leading transformational organizations. And I am holding open that there's also high level representation from the US government and Israel and whoever these other world leaders are, that they would be with us. Hint, President-elect, Vice President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, or any representation that you would want to send on your behalf. Plus, from the representation of Israel. So I'm imagining we're all in the room together with expert facilitation, really creating meaningful change. So Heath, I want to invite you to join the initiative and to consider joining us in Israel for this extraordinary event. And I know that you can't vouch for, and I don't want you, and I really want to be, in all due respect, I don't want to put any pressure, but I want to make the invitation. I want to offer you the ability to make the invitation to Marshall Goldsmith. Mm-hmm. If it calls to his heart at this time of his life that he wants to join us, he would be welcome to join the initiative, and join us in Israel too. So, could I first invite you to accept on what you have control to accept on, which is on your behalf. And then what you also have control of is to actually extend an invitation with understanding that Marshall may not be available on those dates, whatever the case may be. But at least I would love you to actually extend, invite you on your behalf and invite you to extend an invitation to Marshall.
Sure. Well, Daniel, I've been committed to your vision as long as I've understood it, and I remain committed to your vision. So I'll certainly be there, and I'll bring every weapon in my arsenal to support what you're trying to achieve and what we're trying to achieve. I see this being just another opportunity to expand the impact that you've already begun.
So I take that as a yes on your behalf, and I feel so blessed for that. And would you be willing to offer that invitation, understanding that Marshall may not be available? Would you be willing to extend that invitation?
Of course. When I say every weapon in my arsenal, I'm thinking of the hundreds of influencers and 100 coaches, and Marshall himself, who's one of the 100 coaches. So we can talk more. I know that we're short on time today. We can talk more about the ideal people to participate, and you'll have my pull. I'll do everything I can to get the right people there.
Well, okay. Well, Heath, I love you, my brother.
I love you too.
I just, and that's the deepest core of this. It's actually the ability to, John Mackey just wrote a book on conscious leadership.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you want to show the book.
I've got two of them right here.
Yeah.
I'm handing them out to clients and reading myself.
So that's his book, Conscious Leadership. And he's got a call to say, hey, we need to actually bring love out of the corporate closet, because actually that's and one of the things that I've learned in my awakening is that full awakening has three components to it. And initially when I was teaching conscious leadership, there's an element of wisdom, which is up here. There's an element of wisdom that's up here. But since that, I've had my awakening with my commitment to actually wanting to make every moment count, including this one, in intensely loving relationships, recycling, receiving and giving love. There's another dimension where my heart is broken open and I'm understanding that the power source of conscious leadership comes from when it's connected to an awakened heart. Yes. So when I say I love you, I want people to feel the power of that and understand that is the essence of it. And there's a third dimension that I've recently come to learn and appreciate. And that's the spiritual dimension. It's a spiritual dimension. And oftentimes we think of servant leadership, it's serving others. But ultimately what we're serving is when I asked you, because I already want to understand who you are as a person, I said, what's the deepest source of what drives you? And you said, what I am driven by is to be in service of spirit. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what is your term for, because I'm very curious. We all have our own term for spirit.
I'm always very careful with how I communicate this, because I would never want to turn somebody off by leading with it. But what I feel is that there's wisdom greater than me. When I'm in my flow with clients, it's flowing through me. It's the wisdom of the world flowing through me to the client, in service of the client, and in service of the greater good.
There it is. Okay, so that is the essence. So I call that the force field of miracles. So that's the, and I also invite everybody to have, and if you want to call this your deepest source of intuition, I think most people can relate to that, or you want to call it God, or whatever you want to call that, that mystery. That is the power source of, when you're talking about conscious leadership here and coming from an awakened heart, servant leadership that's the third part of servant leadership. It's being in full spiritual surrender to the source of inspiration that's driving all of this. And that's, I think, where we connect. We connect at a heart level, but I think where we really connect is this idea that we want to be in service of that source of mysterious wisdom, something larger than ourselves, together.
That's right.
And that's why, I think it has been such a blessing to be in relationship with you. And I'm talking about relationship, mind, heart, and spirit. And that's been glorious.
Well, Danny, I always enjoy my time with you, and unfortunately I've got a commitment that's about to start, and so I'll have to jump in just a minute. But even I value your time even more than ever, because I know that it's limited. I guess all of our time is limited, but you are a kindred spirit to me. Yeah. And if somebody took a video or mapped out over time the amount of interactions that we've had, they would say, it's impossible for you to feel that way about somebody that you've only known for a couple of years and that you've only interacted, 40 times or whatever. But I feel like you're my brother, and I feel like your family's my family. Yeah. And I love you very much. I love you up here, and I love you in here, and I love you in spirit. So as you navigate what's going on with you, I want you to think of me as a brother more so than as an acquaintance or a friend. I want you to lean on me like you would a brother, and I want you to accept the help that you may need in the times that come.
Thank you. And I'll end by saying, because you said, time is precious. This was a moment that counted. And I trust that you listening have been blessed by this conversation as well. So lots of love to you, and lots of love to you listening. Bye.
Thank you, Danny.